they receive land as property and that they be allowed to form military units. Who created Russia? It was the Cossacks. Even Alaska was created by the Russian Cossacks. This is the backbone of Russia. We can understand the Cossacks. There's a lot of national conflict. The agricultural reforms are being delayed, and there's a fear that rich citizens of other republics might buy up their land, and that is a justified fear. But there are quicker ways of resolving things. That's law, by way of law. This was confirmed to the Soviets by the Minor Council in a recommendation that their demands be satisfied, that the former settlements and towns receive their former old names back, and that representatives of the Cossacks form part of the government, that the Cossacks, the Don Cossacks, be allowed to have their own military units was also to be permitted. The press conference, which was so interesting to journalists, took place in Moscow today. The question of Mr. Popov's resignment as mayor of Moscow is still not decided. The leapfrog game taking place with regard to privatization of apartments and trade and its cancellation is still going on. Popov's decision about handing over departments to the residents free, it was resisted by all other layers of the government. Well, there's a limit how much you can tolerate. But once people go beyond that barrier, beyond that line, it makes no sense to struggle. You're just struggling at that point for your own personal privileges and post. The conflict had to do with the unwillingness of the government to provide Moscow a separate special status. And it was a matter of Republican delegates not having constructive ideas. They all know how to do is to divide the property that already exists and not create something new. So the old team is still in place. For that reason, we see that the mayor has picked up his pen to resign, but he hasn't slammed the door. On economics, there was a meeting of entrepreneurs and lessers of Russia. They support the idea of creating a commonwealth and want to have a unified organization of entrepreneurs without pressure from the government. For that reason, the plenum turned to the Russian government with a request that properties and enterprises would be leased to private individuals, and that a class of lessers and entrepreneurs be created. Belarus has turned down American food assistance. That was the announcement of Mr. Shushkevich today. American assistance, which was intended for Belarus, will now be sent to other republics of the former Soviet Union. In the meantime, prices at the markets are crazy. According to Tusk, in Ulyanovsk, Nizhny Novgorod, Kishinev, Vladivostok, a kilogram of meat costs 3 to 70 rubles, potatoes 3 to 7, onions 7 to 10 rubles. In Moscow, the prices are simply fantastic. According to the city council, the prices for beef and pork in December is 100 rubles, for onions 10 rubles, and for potatoes it's 16 rubles a kilogram. The price for tangerines goes up to 10 rubles per kilogram. Incidentally, about tangerines, the trains are bursting with them. Here in the Caucasian Northern Railroad, train number 47 going from Batumi to Moscow was stopped because it was overloaded with tangerines. They even had them in the passenger cars. There were no passengers, and as a result, the shocks and springs were in such a state that the train could have crashed. For this reason, on a systematic base, trains number 47 and 51 are being stopped at the stations Adler, Topsa, and Kharkov. So the trains are bursting with tangerines, and not only tangerines, but our road vehicles are stopping for a different reason. Today, only a small proportion of our road vehicles are still functioning. There's no more gas. The sign here says there's no gas for anybody. The factories of Volgograd and Donbass and Tambov have declared that they're not getting oil products and gas, fuel. And so the Vetechinsk and Kremenchuk refineries have virtually stopped functioning. The pipeline with diesel fuel from Grozny has been turned off. At the other end of the pipe, it's explained that this was done at the order of General Dudayev. But diesel fuel is what half the road vehicles work on, function on. That includes most of the buses. People who are knowledgeable claim that everyone is waiting for prices to be released, and then there will be a lot of gas. And a lot of goods are being held back. And for the meantime, there are huge lines in the stores, and when the stores are open, these shelves are empty. Dairy products are unavailable in Donetsk. There is nothing to take the milk from the collective farms. I've been called and told that the milk has simply to be spilled out onto the ground. There's a shortage of bread, but still people hope and believe that thing will not become totally absurd, that life in the Donbass, which provides 30 billion rubles worth of production to the country, will not, this economic activity will not come to an end. But for the time being, we console ourselves with reports on assistance. Richard Boucher, a representative of the American government, said that from Friday to Sunday, American planes would deliver to Moscow and St. Petersburg food supplies of the Department of Defense of the U.S. These were foodstuffs that were left over after the war in the Persian Gulf. These were sent to hospitals, schools. To avoid theft, the unloading will be done by Americans and volunteers who will oversee the distribution of the food. Humanitarian aid was also discussed today in the Kremlin. Today, Mr. Gorbachev received Klaus Nellner, who was the head of the largest charitable organization in Germany, to render assistance to our country. Mr. Gorbachev thanked him for all the medical equipment and medications which have been delivered to 20 hospitals. According to Mr. Nellner, the delivery of equipment and medication is part of a broad program of assistance to our country. The visit of Mr. Yeltsin to Italy has begun in spite of his busy schedule. He found time for this trip. This speaks about the great significance which he attaches to foreign relations, and likewise his meetings in Rome. Today, slightly after noon, Boris Nikolaevich Yeltsin arrived at the international airport. There was a meeting, a traditional meeting for such instances, with a honor guard, the flags were shown. A meeting with the president Francesca Cassiga took place somewhat later in the palace. Aside from Mr. Cassiga, there was Mr. Demiklis, and from the Soviet side there was Kozyrev and Adamishin. Mr. Cassiga gave Boris Nikolaevich Yeltsin the highest governmental order of the Italian government, and negotiations began. The Italians are troubled by the changes taking place in the territory of the former Soviet Union, and they are depressed by the size of our foreign debt and our evident inability to pay back this debt in the near future. Hence, the task of the Russian side in the negotiations to establish a new dynamic of relations with Italy. The Russian-Italian meeting today concluded with a joint signing ceremony that's taking place just as I am doing this report. The main point here in the negotiations was that the governments declare their firm intent to cooperate and establish intensive and mutual advantageous dialogues between each other. The visit is continuing, and today Mr. Yeltsin will meet with a number of Italian political figures. Today in Brussels, the winter session of NATO began. Secretary of State Baker arrived there after visiting the former Soviet Union. We received assurances with regard to nuclear weaponry. I am quite pleased with the result of the negotiations, said Mr. Baker, because nuclear weaponry in the former Soviet Union is a very serious problem. In Tehran, the press agency tells us that Vice President of Russia, Rudskoy,